Hello and welcome to the e-sgol Conference 2022 on Thursday the 7th of July. I'm delighted to introduce Alan Byles-Liddell of Middleton School, Denbigh, who's here to talk about Microsoft and all the top tips in Teams. If you have any questions you'd like to ask during the workshop, please use the question and answer feature on the right-hand side of your screen. Alan, when you're ready, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that very kind introduction there, Helen. Yeah. The main overarching sort of role of this one now is to sort of give an idea about sort of tips to use when using Microsoft Teams, and coming at it more from a secondary school point of view, an angle. I've tried not to sort of overwhelm too much here, just some of the things that I've found. I know some of my colleagues have found as well using Microsoft Teams that over the last sort of 2 years, especially, and especially since coming out of lockdown, that we've found work really well for us within the school. So moving on, yep, as you can see here, so this is where we are, or I am, sort of thing. It's Middleton College. We're in Denbigh, in North Wales. Don't be fooled by the grand-looking view of the courtyard there. Some of you may know this if you know the area well. It used to be Howell's Girls' School before it sort of closed down, sort of mid 2000s sort of thing, and we reopened. It is a great place to work, especially in the summer sort of thing. But as a building, it needs some tender, loving care at times sort of thing. And I didn't have any problem with natural ventilation during the pandemic with the windows in my classroom, I can assure you. So as I've been introduced here myself, I'm Alan Byles-Liddell, and what I've done is I put on my Twitter handles here for the department and myself personally. The two kind of merge. I do send out lots of things that the department's doing and other things that I'm doing through the Microsoft Innovative Expert Educators program. Also Flipgrid, which has just become Flip as well. A lot of things that I do there, and most recently as well with my A-level English language blogs that are going on, and my email address is also there as well. That's really for anybody who at the end of this presentation, or when we come back in September, etc., wants to touch base again, maybe ask for a few more things, a follow-up to this, or something I'll touch upon later if you're at all interested in sort of any form of collaboration. So in Middleton College, we are a Microsoft Showcase school. Have been now for about, I think, 3 to 4 years now. They've held that, and central to that, obviously, is our use of Teams within the school and embedding it within our curriculum. What this means in essence is that all pupils will work on devices, and lessons are driven by Teams and Office 365. The sort of devices that they're using, there has been a sort of a mix of iPads and Windows, Surface, that sort of thing, but we are progressing more to being just Windows because it streamlines everything towards the Teams applications and all Office 365 tools that we use as well. That really is sort of in lesson time that we do use that. Again, speaking from my own background in English, we still use exercise books, we still use pens, that sort of thing for extended writing, and that will be happening at least once a week within English. And so we are, before that phrase became so well known to all of us, we were doing that hybrid learning before sort of COVID and the pandemic came along. How that then works within a department. I myself, I'm head of English here, and under my sort of guidance here, the department really has begun to embrace that 21st century learning principles. We use Teams and OneNote to drive our lessons, and that also allows us to connect with the worldwide with other schools. Something I'll touch upon a little bit later, and that really has been helped through our use of Teams, and it makes projects like that and collaborating, whether that be within the school, inter-departments, or external, it makes it so much easier, we have found. So I want to kick off with a quote, and people who know me will know that I will use any sort of presentation feature I can, I'll always think, how can I get my David Bowie quote in? A great David Bowie fan, and this one really is quite legitimate. Way back when, in 1999, when the internet was quite early on in its stages of development, there's a famous interview. You can look at it on YouTube. It's quite a good one because Jeremy Paxman really does look a bit bemused in places. But during this discussion, because Bowie at that point was very much within the music world, at the forefront of seeing the potential with music, how he could, put his own work out there again, his own sort of back catalogue, and it was a new way of sharing his music that he was creating there and then. And this quote, and it has, again, if you put in Bowie's name to a Google search, it's one of the quotes that always comes up with it. And he, at this point, could see the huge potential that the internet had, but he saw it as two things. He saw it as having the potential for, something terrifying, as he says there, or something exhilarating. I think with Teams, and since post-lockdown here, we are educationally, we are on the cusp of exhilaration, and that has taken place. I don't know about everybody else, but I mean, during those times of remote learning, where we relied on Teams totally to get through lessons and connect with our students. It was then I had a bit of time as well to do a bit of sort of reflective thinking, I guess, and it was then about how we could use Teams, the things that we picked up in lockdown that we could take back into the classroom. And I'm sure many of you will be familiar with this. It was the idea of using the chat function in a lesson, actively live in your lesson, to make sure that some of your students were still on task when they weren't being that communicative at times, and this was certainly the case in lockdowns 2 and 3. We found that I found some of my groups, there was that sort of drop off in chat sort of thing is beginning to take its toll. But where you actually then typed in questions and you sort of queued it up in your lesson, that you're saying, right, I'm going to be asking these questions. I don't want anybody to put their answers in until it appears on your screen. So I would be sort of chatting away with them, and I could then bring up a question I put in there, and I would then ask them. They didn't have to talk to me at this point if they didn't want to, but then they could actually sort of feed in their answers. And what was very noticeable about that was that you'd have your eager students who would sort of be quick in or out of the blocks as well, and those who maybe didn't think too deeply about the question. But it was once somebody got that ball rolling, others would begin to sort of jump on the back of their answers, and it was a case that they then almost like the group conference. And what it was you were having, brainstorming by another method, but you were also having a more collaborative experience, and others are getting involved in it. And again, that is something that I'll touch upon a little bit later in this presentation. But I certainly took that back into the classroom, because then when people were a bit quiet, maybe in your classroom, you could bring that chat function in again to engage them in the lesson without it being noticeable to anybody else, because that conversation is just between you and them. And that was really useful. The other one that was really useful was the breakout rooms, and which I'm sure everybody is done those as well. And breaking a group up into 4 or 5 in a group and sending them off to the breakout rooms. It was interesting to see how more interactive they became in a group of 4 or 5, and they would naturally and instinctively break down into a group leader who would begin to sort of almost like chair events and would bring other people into conversation. So it was that really got me thinking about what we could be doing with Teams when we came back in, and beginning to sort of think about how do I bring this into the department and begin to make it more useful, because during this time, I discovered that we really had only touched the surface of what we were doing with Teams. So I think my number 1 top tip, and it's one that will probably drive everything for you, is channels. And as you see, what I've just done is I took a little screenshot up there of my A-level English language group, and as you can see at the top, it's got the usual things that you get in your Teams. You've got your class notebooks, you've got the assignment, you've got the grades and insights, and you've got your 3 little dots as well up at the top there, where that allows you to do your add-ins of, people to remove them from the group, add them to the group, that sort of thing. But I really want to make sure that you do make real functionality of the channels. It's a great way, especially things that in A-level and GCSE groups, it is a great way to organise everything, your syllabus, and everything can go from here. You organise, you collaborate, you discuss, you set assignments, you have your OneNotes, and you put all your resources in here. So as I go through different phases of the A-level syllabus, you know, language change, in there, I can put everything that I want for the language change lessons. I can put in my PowerPoints, which they can access out of Classroom if they're not in the lesson, or if they can't access a recording. Also, it allows them for the revision purposes to have access to this, you know, additional reading. All of these things can be put into these channels, and they then can see that it's neatly, they don't have to sort of plough through the whole OneNote to get to what they want to. It's there in those very easily to find and digest parts of it. So what it looks like when they go into one of it, and I just picked on my language change again, within that you can see that there's the ability then to actually put in so many different things. So here in the language change, I can put in my exemplar answers and commentaries. Obviously, it's going to become really useful for them when it comes to revision. Again, coming up for their mocks, or before I set an actual exam question for them too. But again, it's always accessible for them, no matter when they want to get to it. Doesn't always have to be in lesson time. The theoretical stuff that I want them to look at, PDFs, all there. PowerPoints that I've gone with my lesson, if I've been using a PowerPoint, all there within that one folder, and they get total access to it. What I can also do as well is I can put in external things. Here we've got some Ruth lectures that were done that were all to do with which we call it a language change. It's there, it's downloaded as an audio for them as well. The PDF there is a transcript of that audio for them, so that they can inform it. It's a way then, especially with your A-level, and again, thinking about it at GCSE level, it's a way of making them independent learners. That's what you're wanting to do. And getting them to sort of take control of their own learning. Very easy to do with all this. As you'll see, when you're wanting to put things into the channel, you just use the drop down there of some of the new tab, clicking the button. Is it a file or a folder that you want to upload? You create your file first, where you're going to be putting the majority of your resources, and then just click onto upload, and away you go. What's been really good now in the recent updates, though, is that you get links and you can add shortcuts to your OneDrive. The other thing I like about in channels too, as you can see, you've got your posts, you've got your files, you've got your notes. You can also add on your own different tabs for things that you want to use. For me, recently I've discovered the joys of Pear Deck, where that again allows them to collaborate with your PowerPoint, either as a group body or as individuals. And again, you can just create that little Pear Deck tab and drop it in there, and they can then find that, and it's nice and accessible to them. Kind of chose that sort of group huddle there as well to go with this in Teams, because I think that is what it is all about. It is that group collaboration, and you facilitate that. They can facilitate with you as a teacher, or they can facilitate that collaboration with you as a group in school, in lesson, out of lesson. Other aspect of collaboration, and what I've done here is I've just shown a bit of a posting that's going on between myself and two members of my department, so I'm not using students' name there. But again, this is the great thing in the posts. If there's something that recently one of my students was talking about their language NEA that they wanted to do for me as a language study, and they're coming up with as happens quite often in many a year, is they want to do something in connection with Love Island, and it is an interesting topic that they'll come up with here. And I then found an article that I just noticed in the Guardian. I was able to pop that into the posting, hyperlink the article to it, and I just could do the student's name, saying, right, know you're doing this for your NEA. This looks like it might be a good piece of background reading for you to do here that feeds into it. Here you can see that I've done the same thing. It allows me to collaborate with my staff as well. And we've all been there where we've seen a great resource at one point. We thought, oh, I must get that for later. And sometimes we then forget where we put it and we're rummaging away. This way, you know, you get it, you get the link, pop it into a postings in Team and share it with your members of your department, saying, "Oh, look, this is great. We're going to be doing a long way down when we come back with our year 9s. We're getting them to read over the summer. This is a great introduction to Jason Reynolds. Use this in the final week," sort of thing, before we break up. As you can see, thankfully, one member of my department thinks it's a great resource, and again, immediately that sort of feedback can come back to you. And again, you can do that whenever you want. On the same sort of issue, or the same sort of idea, once you have posted files, documents, work, whatever, up into those files folder, you can then collaborate in real time with a colleague, with one of your students. All you have to do in the files, when you're in Teams, open it up. It opens up in Teams. You then get, and just by going along the tab, the ribbon at the top, you'll be able then, and you can highlight something and you say, I want to discuss that with you. And as you see over to the side here, again, I just use a member of my department. I can pop into a conversation here, send this to them and saying, right, I think this is about the bank of quotes that we've got here for inspector calls. I think it's a really great idea. A little bit maybe drab in presentation at the moment, I think. Let's think how we can make this more user friendly. Send that to him. He gets that in his Teams messages. He jumps onto the same conversation as me. We can then work in this same document together and bring about, and we can do any changes we want in real time. It's all working live in that Teams channel. Do that with members in your department. Again, it's brilliant to do that with students. You could be doing that in the classroom again with somebody that's struggling. You don't have to do that teacherly thing of going around the classroom, sort of looking over the shoulders, looking to see what they're doing on the screens. You can then just, that just from you picked up from the conversation and you can see from their body language that they're beginning to struggle. You can open the document up with them and you can then have that conversation. Give them a few pointers, give them a few tips, how to access what it is that you want to do. You're giving that real feedback. And again, you can obviously, annotate on the screen for them as well. You can have that conversation, but you can point, bring in your arrows and say, right, this is what I want you to do here. And it's all done without anybody else's attention being brought to what the help that you're given here. Allows you to, again, to kind of differentiate within your class structure. And again, it's that real time element you're wanting to do. And it takes us away from, we all struggle with that thing of, maybe talking too much in lesson, that idea about spoon feeding. You can then just have these documents set up in your Teams channel. You open it up and saying, right, everybody, you need to jump onto this. And then you can then go off and talk with individuals one-to-one, and you and the person you're chatting with are the only people that will see the comments in that, nobody else. And it allows the others to get on with the task if they're happy to. Others, you can then sort of fine tune what they're doing as well. Other things that happens here, going back to that original one, the top one, obviously, I don't know about everybody else. When we started using Teams and obviously the OneNote, which is embedded into this, to begin with, our IT wasn't the best to begin with. The network it was a bit erratic at times, partly because of the style of the old building and whatnot. And so we used to work with OneNote in the desktop app because it was the most stable one, sort of thing. Now we've got a far more secure network, and I now use the browser tab in my OneNote to drive everything, because all the sort of updates that come in Teams and through Microsoft, they put the new tools that are embedded into OneNote. They always appear there in the browser function first, and so I always now create my class notebook out of Teams. It's so much easier than adding into your of who's got access to that OneNote. It's also then easier to actually sort of update things, change things, and so I would always drive my OneNote now from the Teams channel. Also, assignments. Now, as a department, we do sort of that extended writing task as we're going through units of work. But at the end of each unit of work now, we're going to have an assignment and we're going to use the assignment channel in Teams here. That way you can set it up. It means that they will complete that task online. It will be a task like that. But also what it then does is Teams then does the grading for you in that respect. You put in your sort of rubric of your mark scheme. When you've done that, you mark it, hand it back, but all the data collection that you'd normally do through a mark book, through a spreadsheet on Excel, all that sort of stuff, that can begin to get done in Teams. And so rather than drawing your data from a variety of places, like saying, oh, I'm going to have to go back, look through my exercise books, I'm going to have to go back, look through what I put on the department spreadsheet for the results here, there and everywhere, or go through my mark book and begin to put that in. It all begins to get collected in the one central point. It's your Teams, and you go there, and it saves time. And it will begin to do the things that we all get used to doing. Obviously, as you go along, it will begin to sort of back up everything that you're doing with this group in the assignments. And so to begin with, you'll get the assignments, you'll see the assignments that your students have completed, they have returned, your grade has been given back to you. But as these develop throughout the year, using the insights, that then begins to put your grades into any sort of type of spreadsheet that you want. And so you can see who is making the progress, who is on target, where's maybe been common areas where the class have struggled a little bit, or maybe it's just elements of your group that have struggled with certain parts of it. So you can begin to sort of drill down into what it is that is going on in your class teaching. And then obviously you can then map this out across your department as a whole. You can compare classes. As a head of department, you'll probably have access to the OneNotes and the Teams of everybody in your department. And so it's very then easy for you then to go and access the assignment tabs of each group, drag them up, get them side by side, and so you can see right across your year group. And again, it's all been put into one place. You're not having to click here, there and everywhere, or do lots of things manually. And it saves important things about, and again, easy, because if you're never too sure where you've placed something, you just put it into the search button, put the first few words in, and it's going to locate it in your Teams. But you know that you only have to go and look in one place. Now, if you're a bit like me, I mean, over the years, you'll sort of redesign bits of your sort of hard drives on your devices, and you put things in for different years, and then sometimes things get misplaced, put different folders, and you begin to sort of click through a variety of folders to get what you want. Here it cuts a heck of a lot of that out, and I've found it really useful, especially over the last year. Then also the other great thing to do, and I mentioned that before, I put the Pear Deck in to mine. I use that quite a bit. Another one that I will use is Flipgrid, or Flip as it's now sort of rebranded itself. But obviously with the 3 dots on your main sort of Teams sort of opening sort of page sort of thing, it takes you to the apps function as well. And so you open up and you can see the functions that you might use most often, and so you can then link that. For example, the Reflect one that's come out recently. I again have began to use that in the Teams OneNote. Very good for the GCSE year groups, where you can add, this year especially when I come up to the exams, and they might be getting nervous about things. You can put in that sort of generic question: how are you? How are you feeling? How secure do you feel in my subject? And again, that's just done between you and them, and they feed back through the little icons at the got there once beneath that. But it's just that kind of way of taking gauging the temperature in your classroom sort of thing. And sometimes you might get the odd sort of what they think is humorous response to you, but most of the time they take it quite seriously. As you know, the whole kind of mindfulness thing and thinking about the well-being of our students now is a hot agenda in education and elsewhere, and so you probably find that they do take it quite seriously, most of them, and that they're kind of glad of that opportunity. And it's a good way to do it as time goes by, to build up that little picture. But again, in Teams, whichever app you're using, you can embed it into one of the tabs in your Teams. Really handy to use. And one other thing that I would use, and again, this is what do we call it? This is the whiteboard, and I don't know why it's taken me ages to actually discover the whiteboard. I've still been sort of doing lots of things by hand and my OneNote sort of thing, and actually I found that this is a great thing to use. And again, GCSE groups and A-level groups, fantastic, because again, it is about sharing, it is about brainstorming ideas. So all you simply do is you open up the whiteboard, and again, you get the whiteboard app. There's a few on the apps there sort of thing, but again, you get your Microsoft whiteboard, you open it up and put in here. I'm again looking back at my English language level group and topical with things here, going back to one of the earlier issues regarding our ex-Prime Minister now. And here we're looking at the way that language is used within the media to position. And so I would have this up here, and as you can see, I've got the prompt, explore the use of language here, how PM has been represented, that idea about Boris rather than Prime Minister. What does the word rock suggest here? And you can see you've got all those sort of highlighters, pens, etc. they can use, they can type in as well. Now the little blue icon that we've got up here, that's where you would add your class. And so you add them in, they get access to the whiteboard. What comes up is the invite button, you type in their names, they get put onto it, they've got access to that whiteboard, and so you can then say, right, Joe, I want you now just to unpick that headline for us. What did you make of that idea of the word Boris being used? He can then annotate on that screen. It's live going on there. And do you know what? Even I find my A-level students, they love this because it's about taking then ownership of learning again. You're there to guide them. You're there to direct them. The great thing is once you're finished with this as well in Teams, you can then just export that as a PDF, export it into a OneNote, whatever. Everything again is embedded, is integrated, and you can post it, put it anywhere you want them to access it outside of the whiteboard. Really useful. And so I'd like to maybe now, as we're coming down to sort of the last sort of 5 minutes or so, I know Julie, who's co-presenting at the same time as me, came up with a really great sort of citation that she found on Twitter here, and it's about that kind of opening theme about how digital tools can help us assist us here. And you've got this quote here where it was saying that it's about things that every so often a disruptor comes into the scene, and this person here has said that Microsoft Teams is the biggest disruptor in education. And the speed of its development is, and you've got the mind-blowing emoji here, and that kind of ties in with it. And it should, and again, I think it tells us again, it's this idea about we're on the cusp of something that is exhilarating. I think through initially in lockdown at first, there was an awful lot of educational apps out there which were kind of almost, they're a bit faddy. They didn't really function totally as an educational tool. But once we came out of that first lockdown season, it was educators realised, they got feedback, and they began to think we need to up the ante on these things. And Microsoft and a few others, they really have brought out some excellent applications, excellent tools that we can now use and we get access to as educators, and they want us to use them, and they want us to give them feedback on them. And Teams is really at that kind of cutting edge, and it is constantly being developed and upgraded sort of thing with updates. And I would say, as we come to the close, it is that idea that embrace it. Next year I'm 60, and I joined Middleton when I was, I believe, it must have been 56 when I joined it, and I hadn't really gone down this digital route at all. Took me about, I'll be honest, it took me about a year or so to get used to the OneNote, get my head around it and all that sort of stuff. But after that, I found it reinvigorated my teaching, and it just gave me, it began to open up lots of potential that I hadn't seen otherwise, and that opens up other potential with students as well, that they can achieve things that you never dream of. I didn't for one moment think that I would be able to get my classes at times to collaborate with kids in America, in France, in Moldova, on Flipgrid, on other things where they can discuss things on a common theme and have this back and forth. Things like Teams allow this to happen. And so my overriding tip, which hopefully you picked up on through this little presentation, is about collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Collaborate with your students, with your staff, with your departments, other schools. And in that point, I know Ian Lloyd would back me up in this. We as a school, we are more than happy to reach out and collaborate with us, because we want to collaborate with us in the Welsh Hub and beyond. And so if anybody wants to sort of get on board and from September do something in English, my department will only be too happy, but other departments I'm sure would be interested too. So I've left my email details, my Twitter details there at the front of the slides, sort of thing. Do get in touch. But hopefully this has not taught you things that you already know about in Teams. Hopefully it's helped you to see a few things that you think, yep, let's bring it into the classroom.
Thanks very much, Ali.
You're welcome.
Really interesting, and I'm sure there's plenty there. If anyone wants to get in touch, they can come through e-sgol as well, which is if they go through ymholiadau, it'll be on the website. I just want to say thank you all for listening, and we hope you found the information useful. All the session will be recorded and will be on the website by the end of the week. Thanks very much again, Alan.
And thank you for allowing me this opportunity, because it's great to be able to share things and hopefully we'll learn back from people within the Hub community too, saying, do you know about this? It's a two-way process.
Thanks very much. Thanks again.
Thank you.